Here on the Morgan Streetman Show, we are chatting with E.B. Tucker about his new book, Why Gold, Why Now? And that's what we're getting into, the why now part of this discussion. That's really the interesting, the impetus is the market we're looking at right now. Why do we need to take care of this right now?
Well, Roxanne, it's amazing we even have to remind people why now, because you think if you're not thinking something's off, then we kind of, have you been on a meditation retreat for 3 months? I mean, I don't know where have you been?
Yeah, what is going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes the answer is you don't quite know because sometimes things are playing out. I mean, if you ask me what's the price of gold going to be, I was publicly on.
Now you're kind of famous for this prediction.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at this.
Yeah.
So I've had a pretty long string of predictions, and what people don't understand is you can't say, well, where will it be in 9 years? I mean, it's impossible. So, but where I do well with the predictions is looking out, 6 to 12 months. It's pretty easy for me to see. And what's going to happen this year is it will break 1900.
Okay.
Gold's 1700 right now for anybody that doesn't know this. I mean, you can go online to a website like Kitco, Kitco is the premier kind of gold information website. You can look at the price there, but $1,700.
Yeah.
And it trades 23 and a half hours a day, Monday through Sunday night through Friday. So you can always get a quote on the price of gold. You can always sell gold all the time. And so anyway, 1900 is the next stopping point. Now, that's an important thing because that was the old high price in 2011. So once you go past that, I think that you're going to pick up some steam and people will see what's happening. But that's my call for this year. There's $200 more to go. Now, I made that call when gold was a bit lower. It was $1,500. I thought it would do that this year. So we're halfway there. And so I do think that'll happen. But to Roxanne's point, I mean, if you don't know that something's wrong, what come on, pick up the paper. I mean, you've got civil strife and government problems. I mean, when you guys were talking about the Wendy's burning, the first thing I thought when I saw the Wendy's burning is I thought, imagine if you owned the Wendy's building at a 5 cap, which is a 5% rate of return, which is common for commercial spaces. Well, what do? I mean, I guess you have insurance, but I mean, what if you own the next Wendy's up the road? You're thinking, I mean, is this really a good time to somebody owns all this stuff.
Right.
And okay, so that's fine, but you enter a world where plywood is on windows and sandbags are around and rubber bullets are hitting. Okay, does this sound like the type of environment that is a thriving commercial activity, right? I mean, does this sound like a bullish? No.
Sounds so stable.
No, this is what you expect, in a war zone. Okay, so that's fine. I mean, I'm not making any social commentary. I'm just saying that you're not really in a time of robust economic activity. Now, what does this mean for cities? How about I was with the former chairman of the Chamber of Commerce in Tampa yesterday afternoon. I was asking him, what's the tax revenue look like? I mean, there's a rainy day fund, all this stuff. Well, you're going to need it. Because people aren't shopping. I mean, you have to go into a plexiglass booth, to buy a cup of coffee. I mean, it's not exactly facilitating, economic activity, transfer of goods and services. It's not a time for that. So I think people need to be ready for that. Now, what's the government reaction going to be? Last week, the stock market goes down. The Treasury Secretary, we need another $1 trillion. Well, I mean, okay, yeah. How many more trillions? A lot more trillions.
Yeah,
that's how many. They're going to have a lot more. Who's going to pay for this? Here's what's going to surprise you. No one's going to pay for it.
I think this is an opinion that you'll both agree with. I was talking to one of my friends who's a stockbroker, very successful, very bright guy. And prior to Thursday, because Thursday was just a wonky day in the stock market, I would be saying, well, it's crazy that through all these insane economic times with nobody out spending money for a couple of months, you still have seen growth in the stock market after that dip. And his thought was that the reason people are still investing is because there is nowhere else to put your money. Because of those scenarios you just described, EB, is it safe in certain real estate places? Is it, obviously Treasury bonds, that's not U.S. bonds, that's not really where you want to be. So that was an interesting perspective, I thought.
I have a question. What if an exploration team went out and found 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools of gold? Would it make gold go up or go down?
It would go down because you would increase the supply dramatically. But here's the problem, Pat George, is that I'm on the board of directors of a publicly traded royalty company. We talk about this in the book. I tell how we started that company. It's Metallo Royalty and Streaming. The ticker symbol is MTA. So I go into great detail about how the opposite problem is happening. The gold discoveries, the proven gold in the ground, is in decline. So the price is going up and the supply is going down. So it's the opposite of what you're talking. And there's people hunting for it all over the world. I mean, you wouldn't believe the amount of money and capital and lives lost hunting for the next great gold deposit. I mean, it's in full effect, and there's the new supply is not coming online. It's in decline. And so in the next couple of years, as the price goes up, I think people are going to run into this problem where the mine supply is falling. It grows about 1.8% a year, the production, whereas the debt grew 9% last year, the total world debt. Mm-hmm. You can see these, once you see these numbers, you can see where this is all heading.
Well, and there's no place where there's going to be 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools of quantity in one place, because the way they find gold in the ground, and maybe you can shed a little bit of light on this, but it's highly dispersed. So they have to go through thousands of tons of rock and other ore and things just to get a little bit of gold out of it.
Yes, you can find it in concentrated amounts, but it's rare. And oftentimes you got to drill through, 1,000 meters of rock to get to that. But in Metallo, for example, what we do is we buy royalties. So we take a 1% of everything produced on a parcel of land. And because we're lazy, we don't want to do any of the hard blasting and all this work. I mean, we found, I tell in the book that my partner Brett and I found that this was a bad business. Mm-hmm. And so we figured out that the royalty business was much cleaner. You have, barely any employees. And it's a lot of diligence work, but it's not a lot of on the ground mining work. So what we do is we try to buy that royalty on an area that's near a past producing claim. And the gold tends to flow onto that claim. So you're exactly correct that you'll oftentimes have 2 grams or 3 grams of gold per ton of rock. So picture the back of a heavy-duty Chevy dually pickup filled with dirt. You're going to have 2 grams of gold in there, and that's a success. Mm-hmm. This is really tough. I mean, in an ounce of gold, you're going to need 16 trucks full of dirt to get an ounce of gold. You don't find nuggets like in the movies. It's very rare to find. You can find that sometimes, but it's very rare. And oftentimes there's not enough of them to make a mine. It's just kind of an anomaly. So when you find that, so it's gold it's very much an old kind of 19th century choo-choo train business. There's not a lot of technology some, but I mean, it's very labor intensive.
Yeah. So the mining business is not itself a good business model. But what you're doing is you're doing a financing portion of that, the streaming portion, where you're taking royalties. Am I describing that accurately or close?
Well, sort of. I mean, and just so you know, I think the mining business is the world's worst business. I mean, I feel like I give enough evidence in that if your courtroom work, you would think that's a pretty solid case against staying away from the mining business. Stay away. But the royalty business, I think it's the most lucrative business in the whole world. I mean, and I know that's a big claim, but you would think, what about Google? Well, the business is 50 times as lucrative as Google. I mean, you have almost no employees, to generate significant amounts of income. And again, we go through all of that. I tell you the whole secret to the business in there. It's very easy to understand. But what we've done is people, older guys, find a gold deposit in the 80s or something. It takes forever to make this thing a mine, like 25 years sometimes. And so we go to that guy and we say, hey, you're getting up there in age. Why don't you sell us the royalty and we'll give you stock in Metallo, and it's traded on the New York Stock Exchange, pays a dividend, all these things. And you can sell that stock, or you could give it away, or you can hold on to it. We've bought 48 other royalties, so we have like a lot of diversity with these royalties, and they're all over the world. And that's been a winning pitch. And so we continue to buy royalties like that. And we think that that's the best way to play this market, because as the gold price rises, the value of that gold in the ground rises significantly, and you don't have to worry with strikes and governments and the expenses and accidents, and you're not involved in all these things. You just strictly have a claim on hundreds of thousands of ounces of gold that are set to come out of the ground over the next 20 years.
We just had a caller wanted to know about copper and silver.
Well, Sure. I mean, copper is a bit different from silver. I mean, and that's more of an economic metal. You look at, the demand side of things. And as you know, Morgan, I'm involved with a company that has copper royalties that will come public soon, too. Silver, I think, is more relevant to this conversation because silver is a monetary metal, similar to gold, and silver has monetary properties. One thing we talk about in the book is that hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years ago, the Roman soldiers were paid with coins, and the coins sound different if they're made of gold and silver. When they cling together, they make a sound like a tuning fork. It has that sound that kind of carries for a long time, whereas if they were made of bronze or cheap metals, they sound tink, tink, tink. It's very cheap. Yeah. And so they came up with this name, sound money.
Oh, interesting.
That's where the name came from. And so if you take a gold coin and you balance it on your finger, and then you tap it with another gold coin, you'll hear this really long drone. It's a beautiful sound that carries and carries. Now, here's why I'm telling you this. Silver does the same thing. So silver has natural monetary properties. It tends to trade with gold. It tends to be more speculative. It tends to fluctuate more wildly. And silver is very cheap right now. It's maybe $17 an ounce. It's 1/100th the price of gold, which is abnormally cheap. And that probably will change. Now, in the book, we say, look, silver is not really a great wealth storage vehicle. I mean, to store $100,000 worth of gold is very easy.
Yeah, it's not that much.
It's not very much. It's a couple of shot glasses full. To store $100,000 worth of silver, I mean, you need like a whole closet in the guest room. So we tell people if you're just starting out, then silver could be a viable place to start. But as you build wealth, gold becomes more practical.
Well, so I know silver is more accessible to a lot of retail purchasers on the lower level. I mean, what would be the way for somebody who doesn't have a lot of money to get involved with gold?
So if you don't have much money, silver is a good starting point. Although we can talk in a minute about the premiums that you have to pay. I mean, a silver ounce is $17, but you're going to pay $25 for that coin.
Right.
So, I mean, you pay a lot of money in premiums, which tells you something.
Yeah.
There's not that much of it.
Right. It is hard to find it right at spot, what they call spot price.
Almost impossible.
Yeah. And more now than it used to be, because it used to trade a couple of dollars above spot, but now, who knows?
$7, $8.
You might be paying $25 to $30 an ounce for silver coins
50%
now.
Premium at times.
Right. So, well, we've got all that to talk about and much more. And we're going to get a few more predictions out of EB, I hope, for what some of the future holds for our country. And it's stuff you're going to want to know about. I'm going to put them on the spot a little bit. And we're going to tell you all about that when we come back on the Morgan Streetman Show. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard. And if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.